Trust me, I know what you're here for, and I am just as excited as you are. Hey people, Voice talking to you, and this is Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl. This is, of course, the sequel to one of the most influential survival horror RPGs of all time, Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl. If you're ready to face the zone yourself, I'll leave a link to the game down in the description, and alongside that is a link to my full playthrough streams if you'd like to see some more gameplay and impressions. In case you don't know anything about the Stalker universe, here's the short and sweet. In this alternate history, the disastrous meltdown of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant was never properly contained, and the unstable release of so much radiation twisted the area around Chernobyl into this nightmarish hellscape infested with mutants. However, it also produced some incredible anomalous effects which coalesced into crystallized chunks of unstable energy called artifacts. These artifacts have the ability to perform limited miracles and defy the laws of physics, so long as they remain inside the zone. Artifacts quickly became the stuff of legends and items of supreme interest to powerful groups. The Ukrainian government quarantined the ecological disaster zone, which became known to the locals simply as the Zone. Brave or foolhardy individuals seeking fortune, miracles, a new life, or just to get back home again began to flock to the zone, violating the quarantine and surviving outside the control of organized government. These adventurers are what we call Stalkers. Now, I believe that Stalker 2 is set several years after the first installment, as we discover at the start that the zone has been expanding and is now bordered by massive concrete walls, and an international agency that specializes in studying artifacts now patrols the borders. We journey to the zone after an artifact mysteriously appears in our laundry basket and burns down our apartment, leaving us with little more than the clothes on our back, our old pistol, and the artifact itself. Now, this artifact is special for two reasons. Firstly, it is the only artifact found outside the zone that didn't crumble to dust. Secondly, it's one of a variety called dummies, a kind of artifact believed to only be useful as pretty paperweights, but theorized to contain some sort of power we simply couldn't understand yet. But this dummy appears to be active. Our character calls himself Skiff. That's not his real name, but it's the moniker he chose when entering the zone. Judging by his hand-to-hand skills and firearm proficiencies, chances are that Skiff had some prior military or law enforcement service, and with the number of dogs we shoot in this game, I'm guessing ATF. Skiff made some deals with some sketchy scientists at the border to get him into the zone and provide him with a machine to recharge the artifact he found in his home. I'm not sure exactly what he was hoping to accomplish or what he planned to do after that, but as is so common in the zone, it doesn't take long for Skiff to figure out that his contacts betrayed him. After stealing the artifact and the device from us, we're knocked unconscious and left for dead in the lesser zone. That's what it's like to wake up on the streets of New York. Oh god! This is, of course, where the game really begins, and after meeting a few other stalkers and learning the basics, we can start hunting artifacts, scavenging for loot and equipment, taking various jobs, and searching for leads to find the scumbags who betrayed us, reclaim our artifact, and perhaps dish out a little revenge along the way. Mechanically speaking, Stalker 2 is going to be pretty similar to a lot of popular FPS RPG games you've played before, in both the way it plays and in how you progress. If you played Far Cry, Fallout, Outer Worlds, or maybe even Atomic Heart, the gameplay loop here isn't going to break that mold too much. You follow leads and jobs around the map, shoot up some bad guys, and take whatever isn't nailed down. I like stealing. That said, Stalker 2 is much more focused on the survival aspects than the RPG elements. Progression comes largely through discovery, as equipment is extremely expensive and money doesn't come easy. As such a major game mechanic, I'm glad to say that exploration is pretty awesome most of the time. The zone is stunning graphically, and the changing daylight and weather effects can completely shift the way the world looks. I mean, seriously, look at this, radiation storm here. That's insane. The zone is as bleak as it is beautiful. Special anomalous locations with some incredible visual effects serve to greatly break up the monotony. Whoa. See, that's what I'm talking about. Holy cow. These areas where the laws of physics are thin are some of the most dangerous places in the zone, but they're also some of the most spectacular and the most profitable. Valuable and powerful artifacts can only be found inside these anomalies. Rare artifacts can be sold for a tiny paycheck, but can also be attached to your suit to grant abilities like various damage resistances, health boosts, regeneration, and other buffs. Most artifacts will also irradiate you, however, so it's important to balance the risks with the rewards. Bullets aren't extremely scarce, but they definitely don't grow on trees. Compared to the first game, enemies don't take quite as many shots to bring down, so you won't be relying on melee attacks quite so much, but if you aren't careful, it's pretty easy to run out of ammo. There's also different ammo types that specialize in different scenarios. For example, high power ammo will carry some extra punch, while AP rounds are best for dealing with armored foes. We certainly aren't superhuman either, and a few rounds in the chest or a nasty hit from a mutant will put us in the ground pretty fast. Resource management is a huge part of Stalker, and on top of ammo, we need to keep ourselves fed and rested, with spare bandages for bleeding, alcohol for radiation, and as many medkits as we can conceivably carry. Our guns and equipment will degrade over time too, and though we can have them repaired by a tech, everything is expensive, and your costs will quickly outweigh your profits if you aren't careful. We can also spend money to upgrade our favorite equipment, as well as customize them with attachments like sights, grips, silencers, and grenade launchers. Just don't go toting that new boomstick around town, as NPCs will react to your actions. You can get away with quite a lot in the zone. Picking off survivors of a firefight is an easy way to score loot. Leading mutants towards a crowd of enemies can make combat easier. That said, if you get into an extended firefight with one of the zone's factions, you might find them a bit tense the next time you visit them. What if I just hucked a grenade in there? Yippee! Ow! I'm sorry. The reputation system isn't especially obvious, but your decisions and how you choose to complete missions will shape the story and the future of the zone as a whole, as well as dictating how certain factions will react to you, of course. Getting onto the shit list of powerful factions will make your time in the zone significantly more deadly, as avoiding combat is pretty much always the ideal. This is especially true when it comes to mutants, who largely excel at melee while we are quite vulnerable at close range. This isn't a serious issue, and this certainly isn't the first FPS RPG with unsatisfying melee encounters, but it does turn battles with mutants out in the open into lots of running away, spamming medkits, and circling back once you've reloaded. Personally, I think most of this could be made significantly more satisfying by causing enemies to stagger or stun when taking significant damage, or perhaps allowing melee attacks to knock back or interrupt mutants. Stealth is also pretty unsatisfying at the moment. The wobbly, fluctuating awareness meters make it really hard to tell if an enemy is starting to notice you or just staring in your general direction, and the human AI overall take their guard duties very seriously.
Suspicious activity.
If your legs are visible beneath your cover, chances are they'll see you. If you're within their field of vision but above them, they will look up to check your location. Boop, boop, boop. Oh, that's awkward. Ow! Ow! The stealth kills are very well animated, but stealth doesn't work all that well on mutants anyway, who rely on smell, so overall it's just not a great system. Speaking of the mutants, the models for them are all fantastic. They are absolutely grotesque, perhaps a little bit less unsettling than the first game because they don't have that weird pixelated effect, but they're still plenty freaky. The human models are all super high quality too, and though some facial expressions feel pretty off, so long as you don't look too closely, the little details like twitching and a guy who talks through his teeth make up for it. That's pretty much the mechanical side of things covered, so let's address the questions you probably still have. The first of which is most likely, do I need to play Stalker 1 to understand Stalker 2? The answer is no. However, the NPCs will explain pretty much everything you don't know about the world to you, but they will treat you like a total nincompoop while they do it, which gets old. I do feel the game will make more sense and be more satisfying if you've at least played Shadow of Chernobyl, but Heart of Chernobyl isn't a direct continuation of the story or anything. The other elephant in the room is the monster size of this game. If you're wondering if your PC can handle it, make sure you even have room for this thing first. I downloaded both Stalker 1 and 2 recently, at the same time actually. Stalker 1 was a little over 5 gigabytes, very small in today's size but pretty hefty by 2007 standards. Stalker 2, however, is a whopping 150 gigabytes, which is probably one of the largest games I've ever seen. So make sure you check the recommended specs before you turn your PC into a blast furnace. When it comes down to my impression of Stalker 2, I was actually kind of surprised that my feelings toward it were so neutral. This was a game I've been waiting for a long time, and it's exactly the kind of game I love to sink hours into. But it wasn't the groundbreaking, trailblazing, be-all, end-all that a lot of people made it out to be. The level of detail in some areas of this game are really stellar, like gun smoke and weapon effects, and the weapons, by the way, feel super tight and are an absolute joy to use. There's also the anomalous effects and the sound design, both of which are definitely hitting all the right buttons on what I want to see from an exploration-heavy game like this. On the other hand, there's some pretty expansive rough edges, like the lack of flashlight shadows, looping dialogue, and reused voice lines, and just a general unpolished feeling to a lot of aspects of the game. One detail that I thought would have been pretty obvious, but still doesn't exist, is NPC's reaction to the player throwing bolts at them. It's not a huge detail, and it doesn't really matter in the long run, it's just one of those sort of lifelike things I would have liked to see. Bolts are typically used to probe anomalies, but anyone who's ever played a Stalker game has started throwing them at characters just to be annoying. Oh, you need a medkit? Hang on, let me check my... Wait, oh, sorry, hang on. Let me check my pocket. There's a medkit in here somewhere. There's just a lot of bolts. There's a lot of bolts in there too, you know. Oh, there's another one. Having some sort of response seemed like a pretty obvious ad to me. And apparently I'm not the only one either, because some of my viewers mentioned the same thing to me during the stream. In terms of bugs, this game has them, and a fair amount of them. Not enough to be regularly game-breaking, and the devs are hard at work on fixing them, but you're gonna have to deal with some jank if you want to dive into this one now. Plus, there is some serious overlook on quality of life features, like the ability to rebind the quick melee attack and several other actions. This is not early access either, this is a full released game. Personally, I think this game could have been much better if it had spent a bit more time in the oven, but it's here now, and I'm a little conflicted. I love Stalker, the original and this one too, but something about it felt just a little underwhelming. What I found to be the biggest complaint from other players about this title was that it felt exceptionally similar to Stalker 1. That's when things started to click for me. The low poly foliage, the similar ground textures, and the lack of terrain variety. This is, for better or worse, Stalker 2. Stalker, but more so. The mechanics are all pretty much the same, the world is, of course, the same, it's just the graphics and the story that are really different, which is why those rough edges stick out so much. That said, this is a development team that has consistently put out some of the most memorable games I've ever played, and the sheer size of this game tells me that it probably gets better the farther you get into it. Yes, this is more of the same Stalker we've come to know through the years, but I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. I guess what I'm trying to say is this. If you're the kind of player that can go back and play the original Stalker just for fun, you're probably going to love this game to death. If you're the kind of player that never touched Stalker but wants to get into it, then take a cautious approach and temper your expectations. If you're the kind of player that gets turned off by outdated graphics or mechanics that don't innovate, then this might not be your speed. I feel like this is a game that will land very differently for different players, and I'm just the voice in your head anyways, so what are your thoughts on Stalker 2? Are you a veteran player from the originals, or is this your first foray into the zone? Do you feel like the gameplay is too monotonous, or are you happy to be back scavenging the radioactive ruins? Are you happy Stalker 2 held onto its roots, or do you wish the devs had been a bit more adventurous? I'd love to hear what you think down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, leaving a like helps us get through the algorithm and keeps the vodka flowing. If you want more, subscribing is the best way to support the channel and keep new content coming your way because I put out new stuff every single week. Thanks so much for listening to me today, and you'll be hearing from me again real soon. Oh, hi. Ow! Ow! You little shit. How'd you even get up here? Ow.